I bid you all good morning, good evening, and good night, wherever you may be watching this transmission. Please, guys, share this transmission if you're in the Commonwealth. It's very important that this message gets out there, even if you're in the United States. Please share this message because it's coming to a city near you. Now, this is pretty bad. Now, I've been talking about the housing crisis on my first channel since from 2010, discussing how they had the Olympics in Vancouver, and everyone said that the market was going to crash in basically during the 2010 Olympics, the market was going to go down, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And the market never went down. It kept going up to rates where nobody could afford to get into their own markets. Well, you could blame governments, you could blame whoever you want for it, but it's something that's happened, and it's happened all over the Commonwealth. So we're going to go over this, and we're going to, today I'm going to discuss to you how Canada might be able to save its housing market and keep it going on that upward trajectory. And a lot of real estate agents will get really wealthy doing this, or really wealthy in the upcoming months if things transpire the way Canada wants to move things forward. Or let's just say we're going to read between the lines. So this is just an opinion piece, and I want you guys to share this and get your opinions out there and comment below. Okay, so let's go get over to Article Scan. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tonight, we're going to have a Mike in the Night live show. Consumer spending rebound. Will we see a consumer spending rebound? Set your reminders here for tonight's show. Also, guys, don't forget there's old Mike in the Night videos with lots of people calling in from all over the Commonwealth and the United States giving us updates on what is happening in their neck of the woods, whether it's finance, whether it's jobs, whether it's 5G, whatever they talk about. So anyways, let's move on. So here it is, guys. It's all over the headlines. It's been in the headlines for a long time, but now it's starting to resurface here. And here it is. Hong Kong's future is unavoidable. Linked to Canada, says MP as Chinese encroaches. So here it is. It's linked to Canada. Why is it linked to Canada, Mike? Guys, you need to understand that Canada, starting about 6 to 7 years ago, Canada's become more of a Chinese autonomous region. Canada's Canada by name, okay. We have our governance. I don't know how loyal they are to their own people, but Canada has become a very autonomous region basically, and I'll show you later on here what I'm talking about. So here we go. So, proposed national security law imposed by Beijing on Hong Kong and viewed by pro-democracy activists, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to get too technical on this. We know what's happening. And so our government today spoke. He estimated 300,000 Canadian Chinese who live and work in Hong Kong and the diaspora that live in Canada now, largely as a result of the handover. So they're blaming the Chinese handover. So of Hong Kong basically handing over back, the British handing over, and then the Portuguese handing over Macau back, Portuguese China, Macau handing it back to China. With the Portuguese, a lot of people from Macau ended up going to Brazil, Angola, and Portugal. So you do have Macauanese living in Portugal. They speak Portuguese. They're kind of like in with the culture type of thing, right? So, and now they're blaming the handover. No. So we'll get into the handover. We were done with the handover. We didn't talk about the handover anymore because that was a long time ago. And that was, they're trying, what I think they're trying to do here in this article piece, in my opinion, they're trying to make it sound, yeah, there's a lot of Chinese in Canada. It's because of this handover back in, what year was that? 1989? Was it 1990? It was something, and I know Macau was handed over to 97. So was handed over to the British. So a lot of Chinese moved, but that was back in 97. Okay, guys. So if you follow the chart on housing prices and where they were headed, it never ended. It got worse, actually. So there, I think this article piece is writing it in a way to tell you, yes, there is a lot of Chinese living in Canada and Australia and the United Kingdom and in New Zealand, but you need to remember one thing. Remember what happened in 97. So, I mean, there's lots of them here. No, the article's writing it to mislead people, to make them think. No, and I'll get into that right now. So, city braces for rallies. Pompeo still watching Hong Kong update. So, right now, Hong Kong police warned protesters against unauthorized marches against China's plan to impose sweeping national security law. Okay, so, and China plans mean an end to Hong Kong as we know it. So we know this was going to happen, and that's it. We know that's going to happen. Now, why did the Canadian government come out and propose this? This is very important. Why? Because Canada's housing market right now is in shambles. Okay? Right now with the whole COVID incident, and Canada's been smart with China. They haven't closed flights with China during anything. Canada's been, working with China very closely. Canada's been hand in hand with China working on resolving issues, right? But the problem is Trudeau's playing the I'm going to go against the communist Chinese on what's happening in China. Do you know why? Because Chinese shut down their capital flows. The capital flows from China. Now, China is cautioning about loosening cross-border capital flows. China will not be loosening. If, in fact, they'll be tightening capital flows come August 1st, 2020. So China would be... so this is starting from China. Money gets connected through different ways, and China does not want... So this is the capital flows leaving China, basically, showing where the money's been going type of thing. So why did our government go against China? The communist China, and go against them after all this work they've been doing with China over these years to bring over wealthy investors? Well, I'll tell you what it is. The Canadian government already knows firsthand about the capital flows being restricted coming from China. And that's put a damper on our housing market and actually brought things stagnant. Just like unmoving. Couple of dips, a little bit, but since they post the capital flows from China, and what's happened since then, you see markets and Chinese investors retreating from Australia, from Toronto. So it's on my channel. You can look this up. I'm not going to go back to it, but we discussed this for years now. So here it is. This is probably not the best article to show you guys, but there's more articles out there about China's capital flows. Now, what's happened? So this is an article from 2016. Canada wants more Chinese workers, students, and tourists. Now, Canada, for years, has set up, so visas have been increasing from China to about 500,000 per year. But opening more visa offices could help Canada compete for Chinese workers and lucrative tourist business. So it's not just Canada, so I'm not putting the finger on Canada or pointing the finger at Canada only. Australia has been caught doing that. London's been caught. England's been caught doing that. The UK, I mean, a country that has real estate agents have been really applauding this and getting this to move forward, because this will basically be a flow of money coming into the Commonwealth. Now, so they did this, okay, fine, and it is 2016, now, from my people I've spoken to in Hong Kong, that since weeks before the Hong Kong started going into the rights, weeks, we're talking about 8 to 10 weeks before, some people knew something wasn't right. So the Canadian consulate in Hong Kong, the lineup it's in one of these big towers. The lineup went into the consulate, outside, and down the fire escape, like 13 floors of people applying to come to Canada. And the literally 13 floors down of just people waiting in line to get their Canadian citizenship fast-tracked. Because Canada's fast-tracking Canadian citizenship overnight, right? Just be careful, don't be Portuguese. Because if you want to watch the video of where they closed down a mall in Toronto, they closed an entire mall in Toronto. A mall. Okay? And people exiting the mall need to show proof that they're Canadian, or they'll be deported back to Portugal. It was in a Portuguese-dominated area in Toronto. And there was a bus waiting outside to deport them back to Portugal. So, but if you're Portuguese, I don't think you're off the hook with this one. I don't think they include you in this one here. So let's go back here. And Vancouver has been transformed by Chinese immigrants. So basically the article goes into discussing how when you bring in, like, the reason why Portugal is the people that live there are Portuguese. That's why the land is divided by, this is for the Portuguese and this is for the Spanish. The reason why Mexico is Mexico, and Mexico is a good example, is because the people that live there are Mexican. Now, here's the deal. Mexico, you just can't go in and buy property in Mexico. You can't do that. You have to be Mexican. Oh, my friend owns a villa in Puerto Vallarta. Mike, what the hell are you talking about? I know what I'm talking about, and I'll tell you what I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about because because you leased the land, and I tried to buy land in Mexico twice in 2 different states, and they laughed me out of the building, telling me that you can't buy in Mexico. You're not Mexican. I'm like, oh, really? You guys are that tight with people buying territory in your country or a piece of land or a house? Yeah, we can't. You can't. And I have a lawyer in Mexico too. So anyways, this talks about how people have 250,000 and 300,000 sports cars with teenagers driving them, and basically people with $1 million cars being shown in showrooms. So a magnet for wealthy immigrants. So somebody named Wu came from China when he was a student, got himself a Lamborghini. You know what I'm saying? So this is nice and all to live the Canadian. I guess is it really the Canadian dream? I think the Canadian dream is to come to Canada or Australia or America with a duffel bag over your shoulder and start a life for a family and build a family. That's what I think the Canadian dream is about. It's not about owning a Lamborghini. So it got so bad that the Vancouver Sun was writing articles that Aboriginals and whites leaving Metro Vancouver. Again, a big issue. So 9,345 whites and 460 Indigenous people left Metro Vancouver for other parts of the province. So what did this do in other parts of the province? I'm one of these statistics. I don't even know if I'm really white because I'm a Portuguese. I don't know what I'm classified as. But to be really frank with you guys, I'm one of these statistics. I left to a small town, right? And when you move to a small town, you're not really welcomed in a small town, especially if you're a housing migrant from Vancouver. I refused to pay $1.2 million for a tear-down bungalow that was 100 years old. I refused to pay that much money for it. So I did the next best thing and bought a house for $260,000, 2.5 hours out of the city. Which, mind you, I got my notice of assessment or my notice of the building, and it's worth almost double than what I bought it for already. So I'm not happy about that because I want my kids to be able to afford to live a normal life. I didn't buy a house to make money off a house. I bought a house to live the Canadian dream. So then it goes into Canada would be in a recession without money laundering. So Canada right now, here it is. They stopped the money laundering investigation in Canada because the Liberal government stopped the money laundering. But what they got so far was from 2000 and I think it was 2010, 2011, 2015. 200.5 billion was laundered through Canadian, most of it through Canadian real estate. It says here it's not including typical in the layering of integration process of money laundering. Typical layering is more the mafia would do typical layering. They don't need to come to Canada to do layering. What the mafia does is they open like a shop or something, and then they layer the money and they pay taxes. They actually pay taxes. They integrate the money into the system, so the system gets a bit of money in property tax, so the system gets something out of it. That's what you call integrating layering, right? So that's the mafia does it that way. But when people come and shadow flip homes and sell homes back and forth to 2 different corporate accounts, 1 person, 2 corporate accounts, shadow flipping, and that happened in Seattle, right? When Vancouver put the foreign buyer's tax on in late 2016, early 2017. Once the foreign buyer's tax went up, Vancouver lost a lot of business because half of them went to Seattle and the other half went to Toronto to destroy that housing market. And if you think it's a joke, world economy would collapse if the City of London stopped laundering money, says HSBC whistleblower. So let's go back here real quick, guys. So if you go to videos, guys, I put up a lot of videos, guys. I put up a lot of content to keep people informed on what's happening. Could this save Canadian housing market? So here it is, guys. I did one about Toronto crash versus Vancouver. You want to see this one? I'm sorry, I just need to say something. You want to watch that video. You want to watch it. Canada sell-off. This is a very dangerous video. Watch that one. Trends in the housing market. The new financial future. So if you live in the Commonwealth, you want to watch that. Bidding wars coming to the United States. So screw that. Screw that. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. Watch this. Go to the channel. Go to the magnifying glass. Type in your city, Sydney. Type in your city, whether it's Seattle. Look. Housing crisis, Australia. Get out of Sydney. Oops. And that's more than 3 years ago because I haven't lived here in 4 years. More than 4 years. I haven't lived here in more. That was in Vancouver. That's been 4 years now. Sydney crash or melt up. Look, Sydney, Melbourne housing stability problem 3 years ago. So many of them. Look, Sydney housing crisis. Years. There's years. One's going back. Sorry, my neighbor's cutting his grass. He usually cuts his grass 3 times a week. So I can't really keep my window open here in my little studio. Type in your city. Watch this. Sydney. Okay, watch. Toronto. Look at this. Housing crash. Poverty capital of Canada. All right. Dublin. Ireland. Dublin, Toronto, Vancouver, Ireland, massive housing crisis. 9,846 homeless people in Ireland. Ireland. The housing blame game. Watch this. Seattle. See, Seattle housing crisis. Seattle needs more Chinese because the capital flows were drying up about a year ago. So they need to keep that. Seattle's disappearing middle class. Seattle housing market trouble. Is this the one? Yeah, here it is. Foreign buyers overlooking Vancouver heading to Seattle in frantic pace. And they did it for Toronto too. So I'm not making this up, guys. I have no reason to make things up. I just need to know where the country is in check. I just need to know what the governance is doing to protect the locals here from being completely bought out. That's what I'm concerned about. During the last election, the Canadian election, they never discussed opioid crisis, fentanyl crisis, unemployment crisis, housing affordability crisis, homeless crisis. They never discussed anything, the dangers of where Canada's headed towards for the locals that actually built the infrastructure. If you're Portuguese, don't go to Dufferin Mall because there might be a bus waiting for you outside to pick you up and take you back to Portugal. Watch that video I showed you guys because it ain't a joke. It isn't a joke. I made the video the other day. I'm a Portuguese myself, and I needed to get this message out there. It's called right here. If you guys get a chance, it's right here. I'm sorry. I need to say something. You better watch that. If you think you're safe in Canada, or if you think, you've been here for 20 years and you're safe, you better watch that video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I look forward to reading your comments. I always read your comments. And thanks for watching, guys, and God bless.